I want to welcome Danu Morrigan. She is the author of You're Not Crazy, It's Your Mother. And I'm so delighted to have you. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Susan. I'm delighted.
I'm real excited because my work through Tai Chi is to try to reduce stress and improve health. And we do that through movement, and it's meditation style movement, Tai Chi. But I think one of the important things too is to recognize what your stressors are. And I just have to tell you that your book for me was transformational. It was like I'd been looking through the wrong set of lenses or an inaccurate set of lenses my whole life. And then when your book quite literally fell into my hands and I read it, it was as if you were seeing into my life, describing my life, and then giving me the glasses to be able to handle it and predict and feel validated. And so that in itself, just that awareness, because in Tai Chi, awareness is a huge aspect. And having that awareness and perspective is helping me so much to navigate through this with a set of lenses and tools that I didn't have prior. So I really wanted to do this interview so that hopefully other people will discover you, will discover your book and your other resources that you offer, and that they may learn from this interview as well and pursue it further. So
hey, thank you so much, Susan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So one of the first question I have is, of all the things that you would like a daughter of narcissistic mother, and we understand that mother can be replaced with spouse or partner or whatever. It's not just a mother that can be part of this narcissistic personality disorder. But of all the things that you would like to tell a person dealing with a narcissistic personality disorder in their life, what is the number one thing you wish they could all know?
That's a very good question. I remember when my book first came out, I was being interviewed by the BBC in Britain, and the interviewer asked me that. And it was actually, I was kind of struck because I thought, well, I've written a whole book of about, I can't remember, 300 pages to describe it. How can I bring it down to the essence? But then it came to me, and I'll share what I said to her. I'll share it with you now as well. And it's this: I want everybody who's a victim of a narcissist to know that they don't have to keep that narcissist happy. Now, I will preface that by saying, obviously, if there are, violence involved, or, you could be out in the street if you don't, obviously, if there's practical issues, you do what you have to do. But in most of the cases, that does not apply. There are no real life or practical repercussions for not letting the narcissist be unhappy. But what happens is the narcissist has brainwashed us so much and trained us so well that we believe deep down that we have to keep them happy. And that's what we do. And so the most terrifying, I'll be honest, but also most liberating thing you can do is to say, I am going to hold my boundary and let you be unhappy about it. And again, this is not about doing anything nasty to them, but it's about stopping them doing nasty things to you. So let's think of a wild example. Say they want to come on your date with your new partner. You go, no, I'm going on this date on my own. And they get upset then about it. Well, why can't I go with you? You let them be unhappy and you do what you need to do. So that is the most empowering thing, but it takes a whole mind shift to give yourself permission to do that. But I would love if every person who's a victim of a narcissist knew that.
Yes, well, that is a real challenge, because it's almost like we are trained to be responsible for that person's happiness.
Completely. No almost about it. We were. That is exactly what she does. I'm using she, a narcissistic mother, because that's what I write about. But as you say, extrapolate that to your own circumstance. Oh, they absolutely do train us that we need to keep them happy. And then if we don't, there'll be sulks or shouts or, whatever tricks they have to make us feel bad about it. But that is one thing we need to change if we're to have any quality of life.
Yes, that narcissistic rage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It can be so powerful.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrifying. And if you
Mhm.
think, again, if I speak from the example of somebody who is born into narcissistic family, we have had this literally from day one, from the moment of our birth. And when you think a child is so small physically and so powerless, and then an adult, so it's scary, even for ordinary children. But then when you're in the narcissistic dynamic, it is even scarier. And even though we're adult now and we're grown now and hopefully have our own resources now, that we're not dependent on them anymore, even if that's the case, that terror is still so deeply buried in us that it's very hard to get over. So I don't minimize what I'm saying by, saying, oh, get over it. No, it's not. It's not that at all. I understand that is a big ask. But what we could say it's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. But it is the key to freedom.
Excellent. So we're not responsible for the other person's happiness.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a
And
that's
as
a good
you said, they'll tell us we are, either in as many words or more likely by implication, but it's not true. We're responsible for our happiness. And if we have dependent children, we're responsible, not necessarily even for their happiness, but certainly for their well-being. And obviously, if you have your own partner, you're responsible for their, not even as much, but for their well-being, or to respect them, or, there is implications there, but not for a narcissistic mother or father or whoever, We're allowed to put our own lives first. And as I say, those of our dependent children and our partners, but that they will be responsibilities we took on willingly. We did not take on the responsibility to be our mother's, what will I call it, acolyte, really, or minion. We did not take on that responsibility voluntarily, and we can hand that one straight back to her.
Wow. Well, that's pretty powerful. Yeah. Well, the second question is, can you briefly describe the signs or symptoms of living with a person with narcissistic personality disorder? Because when I started looking into it, it could be a little bit confusing, or you might feel like they have to have all the criteria. So if you could just briefly or go into that a little bit, so that those of the listeners that are unfamiliar and are starting to find their way can have a few beacons of knowledge and insight.
Yeah. The DSM-4, which is the American Psychiatric Association Diagnostic Manual, did give 9 traits a narcissist had to, 9 traits that could indicate narcissistic personality disorder. And a narcissist had to have 5 of them, any 5 to be diagnosed. And now they've changed it with the current DSM-5 to a way that is even more confusing. When we're trying to identify personality disorders or anything to do with the human brain, it's very difficult to get a handle on it, because there's so many variations and there's so many subtleties. So in a way, it's a good start, but in a way, they're just trying to figure out how to describe it or how to define it themselves. What I would say is that a narcissist is, the big thing about them is that they are the only people that matter to themselves, right? And therefore they think, put it this way, Susan, it's their world, you have to live in it, according to them. And it's completely me. It's like they will do whatever it takes to get their way, because they're the only ones who matter. One way you're in with a narcissist is that you're always on edge, walking on eggshells. Now, there can be other bad things like and sociopathy or other traits that might be going on that would have you walking on eggshells. But one thing we can say is, if you're walking on eggshells, it's not a healthy relationship. It doesn't necessarily define that the issue is narcissism, but if you're with a narcissist, yes, you are walking on eggshells. Another big one is if you start to doubt yourself, because narcissists use a trick called gaslighting to make you think you're losing your mind. They rewrite history, basically. So if you said, look, I'd prefer if you didn't call me that childish nickname in front of my friends, they might well say, but I didn't. And they will say it with such sincerity and, oh, what are you talking about? That you might well start believing them over your own perceptions because you heard them. Because to a narcissist, she has to believe that she is perfect, and she will rewrite history to cast herself as perfect. And therefore, in this example, if it was wrong to call you that nickname, she didn't do it, because how could she have done something wrong? Now, she might do something like say, oh, don't be silly, of course I'll call you that. And everybody thinks it's a sweet nickname. They might have other reasons why it wasn't wrong. But this particular one, we're talking about gaslighting, she just completely rewrites history. And I suspect, and I have no way of knowing this, but I suspect they actually genuinely convince themselves. They don't even know they're lying, because the absolute sincerity and even indignation with which they say this, they must surely believe it. But that same sincerity and indignation makes us, who are trying to be honest brokers and are trying to play fair, go, well, God, maybe I did imagine it, because she's sure. I thought I heard her say it, but she's sure she didn't. And so that kind of confusion is another clue that you're living with a narcissist. What else? That they it has to be all about them. They can take up all the oxygen, all the conversational space in the room. So the only real topic of conversation is them. Another way, is because a narcissist wants to be the center of attention and wants everything to be about her, the two different things trigger them really bad. Well, one thing with two categories trigger her really badly, and that is your own special occasions or your own big occasions. And the two categories are your bad occasions and your good occasions. So say you got into a car accident, say you had a miscarriage, anything bad like that, you will all be about you, as it should be. But that really triggers the narcissist, and she will react really badly. And not personally, but I've heard from Dunhams who, when they had a stillbirth, their mother would say things to them like, well, I don't know why you're so upset. You only lost a baby. I lost a grandchild, and I'm worried about you,
Oh, yes. The little tag.
Oh,
yes.
So that even as something as deep and as traumatic as your own baby being stillborn, your mother will try and make about her. Her broken fingernail is more important than your cancer diagnosis, And then the other category of occasions that really triggers them is your good occasions, because of course that's about you again, and it must not be. So your wedding, your university graduation, your book contract or your book launch, your being on stage on the play, or whatever it is that should be about you,
yes,
really, really triggers them. So that's another clue that you're living with a narcissist.
What about the ability to empathize?
Oh yeah, they don't have that, because obviously then if they did, they'd understand why it was so traumatic that you lost your baby or whatever. No, because again, the only person is them. So empathy is to feel with another person, and they don't feel with us. They I suspect they think the rest of us are just kind of stage props. So why would they try and feel what we feel? Because we're only actors in their play, I suppose, So no empathy, of course not. No, except for themselves. They can be very, strong emotions about themselves and their own concerns for sure, but not about yours.
So when you have a person like that who actually is, because I certainly have experienced this with the rewriting of history, and it's so convincing and you doubt yourself. And then the thought that if they really believe that, then, that kind of ties in, well, should I be, I really thought the person was almost like a split personality kind of thing, because they would rewrite history and believe it so, or convincingly. And yet I knew that this is not the way things went. Yeah. And then if they truly believe that, then are we supposed to have empathy, or are we supposed to be more forgiving if they're not aware of what they're doing?
It's a very interesting one, Susan. Narcissists are not insane. narcissism is not a defense in a court of law the way insanity would be. Well, insanity is the defense per se. It just says you can't be even try, or, you know, you can't be held responsible for what you did. Narcissists are held responsible for what they do. So they can help it, but in another way they can't, because they cannot act outside their nature. And again, it comes back to the fact we're just props. They could treat us better, but, you know, if we're only tokens or icons for them to bounce against, or for them to get attention from, why should they? Like, they don't see why they should. So the example I use, that if I buy a newspaper and once I've read it, I want to put it in the recycling, I don't keep it and put it on a cushion on the sofa and, you know, get it a drink or anything. I could, because I'm in full control of my actions. But the only reasonable thing for me to do is to put it in the recycling. And my desire for a clean house is more important than the newspaper's desire for comfort. And even that's a stupid statement, because why, you know, a newspaper and their comfort, it doesn't make sense. And I think that's what the narcissists feel about us, that we're like the newspaper to them, because yeah, they could be nice to us, but why would they? It just makes no sense in their worldview. So should we feel sorry for them? Well, I don't like the word, and you said, are we supposed to? So the same thing. I find those words can be quite disempowering. Could we feel sorry for them? Yes, and I do, because when I look at my good relationships and I see how vibrant and loving and mutually respectful they are, and how each of us is better for being in that relationship than we are alone, and we're more than the sum of our parts. And, you know, to my mind, your greatest wealth in the world is your relationships. And, you know, that when I look back in the history of my life, the most wonderful moments have been, you know, sitting with friends, laughing or joking, or, you know, being supported by friends when I needed, or supporting them. That is just life. They don't have that. So when I see my life and yours, Susan, and all in full color, I see their lives as being a kind of sepia, as you pronounce it, a kind of half-life. So I do feel sorry for them, but ironically more than they do, because they can't even see that they're missing anything, because they're missing something that they don't value. Do you know, it's I often think of the example of potholing, do you know, where you go underground caving and stuff. Somebody who loves potholing might feel sorry for me because I don't get to have the fun of that. But I'm like, no, why would I want to put myself under thousands of feet of earth and get, you know, do you know what I mean? So it's like, it might be the same for the narcissist. They might say, well, why would I want to sit around chatting with people? You know, I want them talking about me. Okay. So yes, in that extent, I feel sorry for them, but they cause so much collateral damage.
Yes.
And the way they mistreat people and the price they extract for this is so high that my pity for them is very tempered by that. And mostly, I give most of my attention and my energy to feeling sorry for their victims.
Wow. Well, that was just beautifully said. Especially the value of relationships. That was very,
and they just don't have that, you know, they don't have real friends. They have acolytes, or sometimes people they look up to that they're kind of sucking up to, but you know, that kind of real friendship, or and their relationships are always so transactional.
Right.
No.
Transactional, yes. In fact, the turning on of the good behavior, in fact, being able to be nice to the person for a period of time. I've certainly experienced that as well. And you kind of, I guess the terminology that you've used in your book is that hoovering.
Oh yes, if you start to move away from them and they realize that and they don't want to lose you, then they can hoover, or love bombing is another way of put it. They can suddenly be nice to you to seduce you back into their web. But when I use words like miss you, it's not missing you as an equal partner. Again, the example I use is of if a cat brings in a prey at night and you take the prey, the mouse or whatever, off the cat would be very distraught, and the cat would go around looking for the mouse and crying and everything. That cat is genuinely missing that mouse. But none of that is to say that the cat wants a loving, mutually respectful relationship with the mouse. So it's the same thing. The narcissist could miss us as their chew toy, really, their source of attention. And if they feel that going and it serves their purposes, they can be very nice to us until, and then because we are so used to being confused because of gaslighting, we can go, well, maybe I imagined her not being nice. And we go, maybe I was too hard on her. Maybe I should go back. And especially they can also play the pity card as well. And I'm so lonely without you and I miss you. So they take advantage of our integrity, our wish to be kind, our wish to be fair, and that can seduce us back. But of course, then the niceness won't last long once they have us back where they want us. But yeah, they can do that in the first term. So it just shows you they can be nice if they want as well, but only if it serves their purposes, not as a general way of living.
Yeah, I think that's one of the more confusing aspects of the relationship is she in control of this? And then I think she's not in control of it. And then all of a sudden for 6 months, she can be really nice and it almost seems like a normal relationship. And then the other shoe drops. And so then I think, well, she is in control of this. And I don't know why it's important for me to feel like, that to discern whether she's in control of it or not in control of it, because it doesn't really change the reality of what I'm experiencing and having to deal with. Yeah. I guess it ties into my next question. My friends tell me if she can't help it, you should be able to forgive.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I have two answers to that. The first is that normally we use forgiveness for after somebody has expressed contrition and promised not to do it again. And that's the point at which if we are kind and want to continue, we offer forgiveness. And if we withhold it, then we're bearing a grudge, you could argue. But our narcissistic mothers never get to that point. And so if we forgive them the way things are now, it's like forgiving a crime in progress. And why would we do that? That forgiveness is the end of the equation, not the beginning. But also, I would say that if you want, and a lot of people feel that it's for their own spiritual development, it's very good to forgive, and absolutely. But what I would say to you is, in that case, forgive from a safe distance. Forgiveness does not mean continuing to put up with abuse.
So the next question, once again, kind of about the friends. How does one deal with the fact that friends and family don't see this narcissistic personality disorder in this family member? Indeed, to the extent that they think you're the problem and that your mother is just such a lovely person.
Yeah. The short answer to that question, Susan, is I don't know. I'm still trying to resolve it myself. There is no easy answer. But it does come back to the fact that she can be nice to your friends or to other people, that she can control it, because she can choose who she treats badly and who she doesn't, right? So just bear that one in mind. But it's very difficult because, and the thing is, nobody who's been mistreated by a narcissist can even begin to imagine what it's like. And I'm very glad for them that they can't, because I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. I wouldn't even wish this on a narcissist. So it's impossible to give a straight answer. You could try and explain it let me say first, it depends who they are. Like, is it a casual acquaintance at work that your mother happens to meet, or is it your best friend? Obviously different people and have different roles in your life, and how you try and explain things to them would vary on the roles in your life. But if it's somebody that you really, really want to understand it, I would try and explain it to them and say, yes, she's being nice to you, but it's just a facade. And here's a couple of examples of things she's done to me. If they were that interested, they could read my book or look at my website and find out what narcissistic mothers are really like, if they were willing to invest that. And I think if they were willing to lecture you on how your mother is lovely and you should be spending more time with her, I think they should be willing to genuinely hear the other side of the discussion. Another way is to say, look, we'd agree to disagree. My experience of her is different to yours, but that's fine too. But once you don't try and impose your will on me, that you're telling me to be nicer to her. Yeah. But at the same time, this is just more of the gaslighting, because the narcissistic mother knows that I think that she's doing this, and she's deliberately manipulating your friends to try and isolate you further and try and you know, maybe even woo them off you because she wants to see you isolated. You'll find that the narcissistic mother might often, certainly when you're younger and living with her, maybe say, you know, try and encourage the friendships that are bad for you and not the ones that are good for you, which is the complete corollary of what normal parents do, isn't it? You know, a narcissistic mother will say, oh no, she fell in with a good crowd. Because they want you isolated and weak and vulnerable. They don't want you to be with people who support you and uplift you. So it's often that narcissistic mothers can seduce, and I use that word advisedly, obviously it's not sexual, but it's the same process, your friends from you and even, you know, people belonging to you, because they want that attention themselves and they want to see you thwarted.
Is it also in part that they don't want you to have another frame of reference to realize that you're sort of imprisoned or caught in this unhealthy or this toxic type of, because if you have nothing to compare it against, then it's, you know, going to stay there. But as soon as you've got another frame of reference or another paradigm from which to work, then you can start to break free.
So if somebody else is treating you well, you can suddenly go, oh, that's what relationships are like. Now, I don't for a minute think that when you said, does she think that? I don't for a minute think that they articulate this to themselves. One other trait of narcissists is that they're completely unself-aware. You know, they never start to try and figure out their own motivations or anything. I think it's more on an instinctive level. But we can use the word think, and, you know, we have to use words to explain what they're doing instinctively. So think in that context is a good word. Just once you realize they're not sitting down going, well, now if I say that to her and it's all quite instinctive, as I say.
Oh, that's interesting. So not a pre-calculated kind of thing, but
I don't think so anyway. Again, I have not, you know, it's very hard to know what's going on in their thought processes. And if you could never ask them. Now, when you were so nice to my friend, was it because you were thinking that they couldn't answer that? But this is my guess, that it's not articulated. It's just instinctive or, you know, reactionary. Yeah. Yes.
So can therapy help a person with narcissistic personality disorder?
No, is the short answer. They first of all, they very rarely go to therapy because, again, if you're perfect, you don't need to be fixed, right? They might go to therapy to help them cope with, quotes, bad husband or bad daughter, or and then they'll only stay in therapy if that therapist is taken in by them or just panders to them anyway. The minute they get called on anything by a therapist, you know, if the therapist says, well, okay, but maybe you could look at your part in this, they're out the door swinging behind them, and they are declaring that this therapist doesn't know what they're talking about. So no, if they ever end up in therapy, I believe, if, you know, say court mandated for any reason, they can take great pleasure in convincing the therapist that they've changed and that they, you know, to just jumping through the hoops the court has decided, but they would never be going to it with integrity and a clear desire to be their best self, because they're already their best self, don't you know?
Yes. I actually had gone to therapy just once with this individual, and I found it to be such a disorienting experience because the reality that she was painting it put me in that, I guess, that gaslighting effect where I was just like, gosh, I don't remember that being my situation when I was growing up. And it was just, it was very disorienting. Fortunately, the therapist was savvy.
Oh,
and
good.
Yes. And
so how did the narcissist react then? Did they do what I thought they might?
I think she was trying to woo the therapist, like you're saying. I mean, she was just as sweet as could be, and everything was all roses and chocolate and sweet and nice and great, you know, great family life. And I was just like, I don't know, it was like trying to ride a unicycle on a ball, you know, it was just totally thrown off, and thought, oh my gosh. And I think that's probably the first time I really started to see, whoa, what's going on here? And then the therapist had some clarifying words with me afterwards that was helpful. It was probably my first big toe in the field of reality of what, of having some insight. But yes, there was absolutely no change in the individual's behavior or desire to continue.
Well, there you go. And it's interesting, you know, I said earlier, you know, it's their world and they expect you to live in it. What that therapist was offering you was a look into the real world, which is the world we all like to live in.
Yes.
And that your narcissistic individual did not continue the therapy. That does not surprise me.
No, in fact, I doubt that she even remembers that we did it. or claims not to remember. Oh, I don't remember that. So for some, I feel like that rewriting of history, and most of the times in this instance is, oh, I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
Right.
You know, huge events that happened that were either traumatic or wonderful in my life, whether I was growing up as a child and it happened, or in my adult life, and it's, you know, it's not part of her reality anyway. I think we may have already touched on it, but I have a question here. Is there one consistent quality among all narcissistic personality disorder individuals?
Just that it's all me.
Okay.
And it's not even me first, everyone else after, it's me only.
And I think one of the confusing things, because I am an occupational therapist, and so the DSM and all of that are sort of guides, like you said. And when before I found your book, I started doing a little bit of research and listening to some things, and there seemed to be a lot of emphasis on that inflated sense of self, or that narcissistic part, where they, even to the point of having delusions of grandeur. And that was a little confusing to me, because that seemed to be like one of the primary criteria, but in fact, I didn't find that to be necessarily one of the criteria of the individual I was having to contend with.
It's interesting. One of the original DSM-4, which are the easier examples to share, one of them is an inflated sense of self-esteem. I might not have that word perfect, but in actual fact, they have, how could I describe it? They might have a bigger sense of self-esteem. It's so big, like it's encompassing everything, but it's paper thin and it can be so easily burst. There's no solid core to it, which is why they get so easily offended. And that's called narcissistic injury. If you dare say to them, you are slightly less than perfect, you know, or call them on any particular trait that, you know, look, you talk too much, or you talk over people, or whatever. So they're sat there, that they've no solid core self-esteem. Somebody who really does have self-esteem doesn't have to shout about it, doesn't have to insist that you agree. And you can even, you know, call them on stuff, and they will have the ability to look at the thing you call them on and look at it objectively and say, yes, you're right, or, you know, and accept maybe that you're right and they have to change, and it won't impact how they feel about themselves either, you know, that they're okay as they are. And yes, room for improvement for sure, but not, you know, they're still okay. So, and then the grandiose, one of the traits is fantasies of unlimited success. Now, again, I don't know how we know what their fantasies are, but they certainly think of themselves as better than everybody else. But I know what you're getting at, because when we think of a narcissist like that, you think of somebody who's very big and loud, out and proud kind of thing, taking over the room and being the center of attention. And some are, and we call them, you know, overt narcissists. But you also have covert narcissists who are quiet and timid, and they might be the fragile ones, and, oh, poor me, sitting in the corner, and I need a lot of minding and taking care of. And every narcissist needs attention, and the grandiose ones are looking for admiration. Hey, look at me. Whereas the other ones, their attention is sympathy, or sympathy really, and care. And so they can be quieter, and they can actually be much harder to identify, but it's still all about getting all the focus of attention on them. And really, the one thing a narcissist wants is all the attention, and there's just different tactics about how they go about getting it, whether they're out and proud, or whether they're small and, subtle.
Yes, I find that, yeah, that was very helpful. And I kind of feel like the covert one is a little bit, well, no, maybe a lot harder to identify and harder to deal with, to get other people to see it.
Yes. Yeah. Because if they're really loud and take up the room, yeah, everybody can see that, but the other is much more subtle, which perhaps is why many do take it as a strategy, because it's an effective strategy. One
Right.
trick to know a narcissist as well, or other toxic person, is how do you feel after you've been with them?
That's
And
excellent.
again, when I was talking about earlier, the friends I've been with in the chat, and you come away from it and you're just buzzing and floating because it's just so energizing. Whereas anytime, I know when I was with my narcissistic mother, I would, not literally, but metaphorically, crawl away. I would be exhausted. I'd be a broken woman. And my husband did point out once that after we'd been in touch with my parents, both he and I and my son, we used to we'd get home and go to opposite corners of the house and just, do something close to try and decompress, was the way he said it, that we all had to recover. And then we'd come back together when we were a bit functional again. And it was only when he pointed it out, I realized it was true, that we needed recovery time after being with our parents. Now, that's my parents, I should say. That's not a good trait. Now, if you have a good friend who's going through a crisis and you're supporting her, you can be tired coming away. I'm not saying, but I'm sure you, Susan, and everybody listening to this can understand the distinction.
Yes.
And so whether they're a loud one or a quiet, sneaky one, you'll still feel the same sense of exhaustion after having been with them. And that's a good clue.
Yes. Well, that's a great sort of a litmus test of because we tend to doubt ourselves a lot when we're on the receiving end of this craziness. And I think when it's covert, it's even harder to get a bearing on it, which having that as a measurement, whether this is a good relationship or a toxic relationship.
And I doubt myself. I've literally written the book that you're kind enough to talk about here, and I like that. But I still want to be fair to people, and even now, I sometimes think, oh, am I wrong? Have I done her a big injustice? And I have a few little go-to memories that I go, no, hang on. But I even doubt it, because the gaslighting is so good, and because we don't want to be telling nasty things about people. So it makes, I think there's a kind of tension between certainty and doubt that we have to hold to be a person in integrity, because we can't know everything, but we need to know enough to function in the world. So, and that's another trait of the narcissist. They are certain it is the way it is, and the way I said it was is the way it is. And that kind of certainty is another, I think, again, if it's, this kind of absolute certainty, yes, I did not say that, or, or I don't remember it, is a more subtle one. But the same thing, I definitely don't remember it. So that is another trait that they have the certainty. And our doubt comes from being a genuine person who wants to be fair to everybody, and from the fallout of all the gaslighting all our lives.
Yes. And so the narcissistic person never has that doubt.
No.
Yeah. I think one of the things, and you can please share, agree or disagree, but one of the things that's kind of anchoring me a bit is that fortunately, when I was a child, I did kind of keep a journal off and on.
All right. Yeah.
And so when I start losing well, am I right about this? Just even now, if I write some things down so that I can go back and reflect and read on these things and see it from an more objective viewpoint. And that sort of helps to anchor me to say, oh yes, I'm right. I'm right about this.
That sounds like a very good idea. Yeah.
It's painful
sometimes,
but
and hard work. And it shouldn't be this hard work to try and again, in a healthy relationship, you can remember things differently. But, with a narcissist, it's like you always misremember and she always remembers correctly. Really?
Yes. Yeah. So that leads me to your book and the wonderful title of it, You're Not Crazy, It's Your Mother. I love the title because that's exactly what we tend to think. We tend to think it's us. And until we start to get educated and have this new set of perspective and lenses. So I would really love for you to talk a little bit about your book, and I will put a thumbnail up there with your book and maybe how people can find it and purchase it. And also any other resources or strategies that you want to share so that more people can find you and your work, because I know that it has just been a huge pivotal event in my life. And I thank you so very, very much for that. And your writing is superb. It's excellent. It's easy to read. It's clear. It's personal without going into your own personal story and making it about you. And I've read some other books where it wasn't that. There was not that balance. That kind of turned to be more about them and what happened to them. And we have our own stuff we're dealing with. And you struck just such a perfect balance of being able to communicate. This is what it is. These are some things how to cope with it. This is what to predict. And some of your predictions were spot on, startling so, without dragging me into the darkness of somebody else's story. And so I really appreciated that. And again, your writing being so clear and it's accessible, but it's not oversimplified either. It's really very, very well done across the board. So I want people to find you. I want people to have that same awareness and that pivotal event in their lives so that they can maybe start to break free a little bit and enjoy a new breath.
Yes, lovely way of putting it. And particularly for you as a Tai Chi teacher, breath is very much part of it, isn't it? So that's perfect way of putting it. Yes, I called it "You're Not Crazy, It's Your Mother," and because that's what 99% of Dunham say. Dunham, standing for daughter of narcissistic mother, say when they, oh my God, it's not me. I'm not crazy. It was her all along. Because these narcissists gaslight us into thinking we're crazy. I remember such a thing, but it never happened. We think, that is crazy making stuff, isn't it? When I was writing the book, I was very clear that it wasn't a memoir. And I only share bits about my own story, but to illustrate examples. And so obviously I had a rich mind of that. And in a way, that's validation for me. If people resonate with that, that's another way of me going, oh yeah, it must be. And the other thing is I wrote it. I wanted it to feel like, I was sitting down with you, having a cup of tea and chatting, because it's not an academic book in any way. So yes, that's, and the other thing I was going to say and thank you for the compliment that you said, I was able to predict, and so many other Donhams have written to me about that. But this gives me huge amusement, Susan, because the reality is narcissists all think they're so precious and special, and they're actually all so predictable. They all have the same handbook and they all do the same things. This is not my genius that I predicted this. It's their banality. Really, seriously, they are. So, press button, get result B kind of thing. So that was and when I wrote it, it's not me saying that people get value out of it, it's you and others. I'm so grateful for that people have. And every time somebody writes to me and says, I read it and I can free myself now, I kind of go, this is why I did that. Okay. And the other thing I would offer people is to come to my website, daughtersofnarcissisticmothers.com. Obviously, again, it concentrates very much on daughters of narcissistic mothers, but there's a huge overlap if we look at like a Venn diagram for other victims of narcissists as well, of all sorts. And I do have what I call the Guidebook to Healing and Thriving, which is exactly as it says. It's a 3-day email every 3 days of an email message about exploring this whole dynamic, how to live in the world as a Donham, how to step into that new world, which is your own world, more traits of the narcissistic mother and their little tricks they'll try and so on. And that, that's a resource that people might find useful. And then all the other resources are on the website as well.
And that resource that you just referenced, that one's free, is that correct?
Yes, it is free. Yeah, absolutely. yeah, and I just send that out as an email because I want, again, the more people who get free, the better. I do practice a technique called EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, which again, people in Tai Chi might have heard of. And I do share, I've created resources, scripts around using this tapping to deal with the issue, the fallout of being a daughter of a narcissistic mother, and people can get those on the website. But also there's extensive free training on how to do it. Training was too posh a word. It's actually a very simple process, but there are free instructions because I'm all about empowering people. And if I can help, and there are some resources that are paid for, but you know, you don't need them to do your own work. So you can learn how to do EFT on my website as well. And I would recommend that. It's a great way of, I mean, it's not the only solution, but it's the one I found and the one I advocate. But I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's a very good one. That full information on that on the site as well. And then people, you know, email me. I do offer coaching. Now, I'm not a qualified therapist. I have to say that, not a qualified anything. And I'm just a fellow Danu. But, you know, I offer coaching, so it's not therapy. But, you know, somebody says, look, you know, my mother wants me to go to a birthday party and I don't know how. I do not want to go, but how can I say no? And, you know, that sort of thing, I can help a daughter of a narcissistic mother work her way through. So again, the details of that are available on the site as well.
Well, and I will put those links at the bottom of this video as well, so that people can just click that and be routed. Now, how best to get your book?
It's available on all the places, Amazon.
Okay.
I'm not sure if the other American ones, but the Barnes and Noble, I think, any of those places, yeah, it's there.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to the Amazon link. I think that's most.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
as,
perfect, and I appreciate that, Susan. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, absolutely. It's just truly my pleasure, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview and share your knowledge and your journey and provide the encouragement that you do and the insight that you do. Do you have any other last statement that you would like to impart to individuals that are either beginning this journey or are immersed in it in the very moment that we're doing this?
I want people to know that it's their life and they're allowed to live it. You know, because who else's life is it? And, you know, no matter your faith, like if you say you're a Christian and you believe in an afterlife, you'll still never be you on this earth now ever again. Or if you believe in reincarnation, you'll still never be you in this earth on this time. So this life is the only one of this shape that happens. And there is nothing wrong with living it the way you want. Again, in integrity, obviously, I'm not advocating, you know, but I think people know that. But you know that you don't have to sacrifice your life for somebody else's whims.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement. Once again, I think it circles back to the first of the interview, where we're being very conditioned to feel like we do need to make the sacrifice. And there's so many, you know, stories out there that you're supposed to sacrifice for your family members. You're supposed to be, you know, do for especially the mother-daughter thing. And all of that just sort of these unwritten laws that we have to supposedly adhere to. So
if I could add, if we've time, for another quick thing.
Yes, of course.
Because you said unwritten laws, and that's exactly what they are. I call them stories that we all tell stories as individuals about how the world works, and society does as well. And we live by those stories, and our own stories are so in the water, in the air we breathe, that we don't even register them. But we can identify stories of people who are separated from us by either culture or time. So for instance, before, people used to think it was okay to send children up chimneys working or have children working in factories, right? We know that's not true now. People used to think that women weren't intelligent enough to vote, you know, but the people then believed that as completely like, yeah, duh, of course. And the one story we're living in now that people really get challenged by is that the mother is so sacrosanct and mothers are perfect and we all have to love our mothers. And we just had our Mother's Day here in Ireland. Was it last week? Yeah, last Sunday. And I know yours is coming up in May. And that's a day when everybody celebrates mothers, and that story is so strong in our culture. And I really would invite people to say, well, that is only a story, and I don't have to tell that story if it's not true for me.
Yes, boy, that in itself is powerful and liberating. Yeah.
And it's hard because you're going against your culture, you're going against, what everybody else around you is saying.
Yes.
But it does free you from living that reality yourself, which is not serving you, because the more you are hooked into your narcissistic mother, the more she can abuse you.
Yes. And it at least opens the door for options that we otherwise would not entertain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not even in our realm of thought processes.
Yeah, exactly. So I want people to have the freedom to think, to choose their own life. Yeah. And have whatever shape that has. And I'm not saying it means cutting off your mother if it doesn't suit you. I'm saying I would love you to have a real choice. Whereas if you're just buying into the story, you don't have a choice.
Right. Exactly. And other people around you are telling you don't have a choice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that's why it is hard swimming against the tide of culture, for sure. But
yeah.
So none of this is easy, which is why we have to write whole books about it and have these interviews about it. This is a complex topic, and one that every victim of a narcissist has to find her own way through, and kind of tiptoeing nearly, because it's it's like minefield nearly. There's so much that's complicated. But as somebody who is the other side of that journey, I had cut off contact with my narcissistic mother and my enabling father, and has been building her life since, and is doing so much better than I ever did. I say that, and others have said, it's not just me, others have said it, that the view from the top is very lovely, even though it's a hard climb. And I'm really mixing my metaphors here, going from minefields to mountains, but anyway.
Yes, no, I love metaphors. So it's a great thing. And knowing too that now we are not having to deal with this alone, because we've got resources like those that you're offering, and and to do, to look, don't try to journey through this by yourself, right?
No, exactly. And if you do go for therapy, please make sure it's somebody who does know about narcissistic personality disorder, because too many therapists would kind of say, oh, she's your mother, of course she loves you. So make sure it's somebody who knows, because if you're going to get help working with this, make sure it's help that will help you.
Yes, and not cause more confusion and damage. Yeah, exactly.
So that's it really. I want people to live their lives and be happy, and this is my little bit toward, to sharing this information, to, as you say, opening the door a little bit to let people at least get a view through. So thank you, Susan, for facilitating that. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I'm so very appreciative, and I'm really happy we were able to do this. So thank you, Danu. And again, to my listeners, I will put all those links down at the bottom so that you can click on those and find out more. And both Danu and I have a similar track in that we just want people to be happy and enabling in their own life to lead the life that they want. So I am very pleased to have had this opportunity. So thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Right.
Bye now. Bye.